Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Miss Marian Collins. Good evening. Carl Van Doren.
How do you do?
Ellery Queen.
I'm Ellery. I'm Queen.
And our genial master of literary ceremonies, that distinguished humorist and light versifier, Ogden Nash.
On behalf of our sponsor, welcome audience, seen and unseen, to the first broadcast of Author. Briefly put, Author is a game of story invention in which you'll be able to hear how America's most famous writers invent their story plots. Ellery Queen, whom you all know as collaborators on detective fiction, and I will be with the program from week to week. Two different guest authors will play the game with us each broadcast. And tonight's guests are Miss Marian Collins, radio and short story writer, and Carl Van Doren, distinguished critic and novelist whose recent biography of Benjamin Franklin is among America's best sellers. The game of Author begins with a little drama. It's called the $2,001 Watch. The scene is Spiffin's, famous Fifth Avenue jewelry shop. As the store opens, the day's first customer, a shabbily dressed man, enters and speaks to Mr. Stillman, sales clerk.
Good morning. I'd like to see a watch.
Yes, of course. Any particular kind of watch?
No, any watch.
Very good, sir. Now here, sir, is a very fine platinum case jeweled watch.
What's the price of it?
$2,000, sir.
I'll give you $1 for it.
$1?
That's what I said.
Excuse me, sir, but are you serious?
I offer you $1 for that watch, and I mean
Get
it.
out of here! Get out! Is this your idea of a joke? Why,
What's all the commotion about?
Why, this man, Mr. Spiffin, has the nerve to